just going to click record on here because we did say we were going to make this available for everybody after this next hour. Welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Obviously, some really good news on the back of last week, and really there's been a lot of information, as everybody's aware, that's come up in the last week or so. So whether or not you're aware, there's 2 sessions tonight. There's obviously this hour here now with myself and Ieuan, and at 8:30, some of you may be tuning into that, but if you haven't or you're not aware of it, we do have a kind of a more general Q&A at 8:30 tonight. So just to give you a little bit of a heads up, this isn't kind of a general guidance type Q&A. That's the one at 8:30. This is purely a welfare one. We kind of wanted to dissect the guidance a little bit. It's all great to get swamped up in the text, but actually practically when we get out onto the pitch, we've still got youngsters, we've still got players, we've still got coaches, and a lot of people that rightly so there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty still, and we just want to try, and the point of tonight is just to allay any of those fears. Hopefully if there's 1 or 2 take-home tips that you get from tonight that maybe you haven't thought of already, that's hopefully what tonight is trying to achieve, really. So just a bit of housekeeping before we start. As I say, ideally we're probably going to stay on mute for the majority of this session. Please do use the chat box at any stage. If you've got a question, however daft you think it might be, I guarantee you if you're thinking it, somebody else probably is as well. So feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll do my very best to get round to every question we get in there. So fire away on that. And really, welcome to Ieuan. Many of you will know Ieuan. If you don't, Ieuan is the Cricket Wales Safeguarding Director, I think is your official title.
It is, yeah.
So welcome. Thanks for tuning in for us tonight. As I say, it's going to be largely just a general chit chat, really. But as I say, feel free to jump in. I think, mate, we'll start generally with mental health is a big one, isn't it? In terms of, it's been months now since we've been able to get out on the park, and the season hasn't really started yet until hopefully this weekend. So, what do we as coaches, well, I'm a coach, but not everybody on this call will be a coach, but club people, what do we need to be aware of? Certainly more the junior players, but I guess players in general as we kick back off. What do you reckon?
Yeah, thanks. Really good question. I mean, the reality is it's fantastic to be back, and I don't think any one of us is disappointed to see cricket return. Goodness, it's been a while. So very important that we get back. Very important we recognise that there will be individuals in the game, children and adults, but probably particularly children, who will be quite anxious about return. So, cricket, children might not be as switched on to the politics and some of the things that are going on, but they will have overheard things on the television. The words death and illness and pandemic, things like that, which will be unsettling. They'll see people wearing masks and gloves and various different things, which will be unsettling for a few. So we have to be aware of that and be very conscious of that. We mustn't force people to return to cricket. If people are uncomfortable, then let's have conversations with them and find out what their anxieties are, find out what their worries are, and then we can talk to them. We can talk to them about the planned return, about how much the work that we've done in the background, the work we've done with the Welsh Government and with the ECB, that's designed to only let us go back when we feel it's safe to do so, which is absolutely the right message that we need to be passing out there. So, yes, it's okay to be anxious about return. In a way, I'm hoping to get back playing bowling wides on Saturday, and I'm a little anxious about returning, about what that's going to look like, and cleaning the ball every so often, and it's going to be a bit different, but I'm going to give it a go, and I'm sure that many will be also excited about doing so.
Yeah, cool. Delith has just popped in, so welcome, Delith. You haven't missed much. You've just missed the first minute or so.
I was late.
That's all right. If you want to just pop yourself on mute, if that's okay,
Yep.
and chip in on the chat box with anything that doesn't make sense, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Just one point you picked up there, Ieuan, in terms of playing, not feeling pressured to come back. Now, obviously, I'm coming at it from a pathway angle. There's very different other strands in terms of cricket that people are coming back into, but yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? We want to make sure that it's very easy for a youngster or a parent or somebody who who's been involved for a number of months or years to think that, right, I've got to get involved, otherwise it's going to go against me type thing. That's something that I guess right here and now we should put to bed, really. It's a very personal choice, isn't it?
Exactly right. And behind the scenes, everyone's got different family circumstances and parents, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, grandfather, and so on, so that may have particular backgrounds that mean they're more vulnerable. So it's fully understandable. And so the important thing for me is about talking to people. If people are anxious about it, please share those concerns. Speak to your club welfare officer, speak to your coach, speak to someone, one of the Cricket Wales staff, or the welfare team, that's across Wales. There's lots of support available. The worst thing individuals can do really is keep things in. If you're worried about stuff, we see a little hashtag on Twitter quite a lot. It's okay not to be okay, and I really sort of stand behind that. And if people are anxious about anything, they need to say so.
Yeah, absolutely. A few more latecomers, guys. Welcome. And just to re-emphasise the use of the chat box if you want to pop a question in. Sticking on the juniors, mate. In terms of, there's the anxious bit. There's also a lot of frustration probably in youngsters coming back. We've been inundated, and there's been lots of initiatives, and we've all seen the work that juniors have done at home in the garage and in the lounge, and whatever space they've been able to find to do stuff. Naturally, there's going to be a little bit of frustration. I think there's all the hours you put in the winter, and they haven't had the chance to kind of show that off, if you like. So from my point of view, I guess I would look to try and say, look, you're not expected to be scoring 100 tomorrow or on Saturday. That nobody's really expecting that. But I guess again, it's that anxiety and wanting to get out there and hit the ground running. That's that probably isn't going to happen for a lot of people, and coaches and again parents, club people should probably be aware of that.
Quite right. So I really feel for all cricketers really that have trained and worked hard over the winter period, particularly sort of the pathway players and regional players that have dear me, worked so hard and been selected for squads and literally just before the start of the season, when letters are going out announcing people that are in X squad or Y squad, it's then that we have the pandemic. So I really feel for those individuals, but just come back and play. Cricket wants you back. We're a nice friendly bunch, and just come and play. As Matt rightly says, great if you score hundreds and take fifers, but just come and play. Get back involved in the game, and let's develop it as much as we can with the remainder of the season.
Yeah, definitely. And we've also had, and I'd put myself probably in this category once. Cricket means a hell of a lot to a lot of people. Probably too much to some people, and I say I put myself in that category.
Yeah.
How much do we need, again, youngsters wise, do we need to be aware that cricket forms a massive part of people's identity, and they've lost that for a large chunk of the summer. So again, from a welfare and safeguarding angle, how do we look to? Is there anything we can kind of do in that space? Once we resume.
Yeah, I thoroughly get the cricket is life scenario. I can remember as a kid going down to West Cricket Club with both my brothers and scraping the snow off the wicket to have a net. And it's part of my psyche. Cricket was very much a life for me. So we got to recognise that. But I think the message I give to kids on the pathway, and certainly, safeguarding and sport coaches, certainly at elite level, are starting to recognise now that focusing just on one subject, just on one topic, just on one area isn't necessarily good for you. So my lads, or one of my lads played sport in the league level, and he was actively discouraged from getting involved in other sport. Well, we don't do that, and we actively encourage kids to be involved in other sport, to stay fit, to stay active, and importantly, to stay mentally well. And the more you've got a reason and a purpose to get up and stay active, the better. And that shouldn't just be cricket.
Yeah, cool. And as you say, I think coming back and having missed it for such a period of time, I think the hope from our point of view is that you realise why you fell in love with the game in the first place, really. So
Absolutely. I'm certainly not advocating playing in the snow. It was freezing.
I don't love it that much, but there you go. Okay, cool. So anything on, if just for people in this, if anybody's got any mental health questions or bits around that, as I say, we'll probably move on from mental health in that sense. But
I just want to add one thing. Well, people think if they want to chat, any mental health sort of stuff, chuck it in the chat box. But you'll be aware that I raised some money in the last couple of months by shaving my hair off, which is now growing back, fortunately. Those of you that are on the call, and I can see some of you that I know well that donated, thank you very much. Managed to raise 1,020 quid for opening up cricket, which is a wonderful charity that's all about mental health, mental well-being, asking for help. It's a brilliant charity, and so thank you to people that supported me in that.
Yeah, cool. It's a good charity, and it's a cricket-specific one. Actually, one of the few mental health cricket ones there is. So, again, that's another avenue potentially if people don't feel comfortable coming to us, or they want to go somewhere completely kind of non-cricket Wales related, if you like. There's a good avenue there and a good signpost. I'm going to pick up a question actually that I got. That we Cricket Wales received today. This one is probably going to come up at the 8:30 webinar, but we've just touched on mental health. This one's more physical health one, certainly where the juniors are concerned. So I can't remember who it was that submitted this one, but it said, is there a limit on the amount that juniors should play aside from the fast bowling directives, given they're cramming 4 months of play into what's left of maybe six to 9 weeks of the season? It's a really good question. Basic answer to that is yes, there is a limit. It's something that I'm not sure it's kind of, I don't know how strictly people follow it, and in terms of policing it, I'm not sure there's a police for that as such, but it's really good common practice to observe it, and that's the 7-4-2 rule. So that is 7 days. You shouldn't be playing more than four games in those 7 days, and you shouldn't be playing more than 2 days of cricket consecutively. That's the same type of protocol we follow from a throwing perspective if you're doing throw-in practices and things like that to preserve your arms. So if you're not aware of that, it's a really good one, and parents particularly, that's a really good one. Coaches, you might just want to check in with your players and think, right, what have you done this week? How much cricket have you played? Have you played Monday to Friday? And I know players do that. I know there's lots of players that do that. And again, once upon a time, I probably did that as well. It's just about being sensible. We don't want our youngsters, despite we want them to get out onto the park, we don't want to be causing undue physical stress on the body. So that's a really important one and a good question for that one to pop up. I think you've kind of touched on this really, but just going back to kind of advice for, if we observe something, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever our cricket activity is going to entail, where are we going to go in terms of, obviously you've got yourself, you've got club welfare officers, I believe, are a good point of contact if we notice anything amiss. Am I right in saying that? Yeah.
So in safeguarding world, we call it a concern. So if someone's got a concern, and that could be a physical concern, it could be a mental health concern. So the bottom line is, if the spidey sense is tingling that someone's not right, then we need to be finding someone, talking to them and asking them about it. So I give a really good example from another sport I worked with recently, and a coach described that there was a kid there that was really active and really outgoing and the life and soul of the party, and suddenly became very insular, very withdrawn, very quiet. And the coach took him to one side and said, "Look, what's going on, fella? And how can I help?" And the child opened up and disclosed that there was some stuff going on at home. Mum and dad were in a difficult place, and it was upsetting him mentally. So the organisation, the club, were all able to put some support in place, a mentor for the young man, and to provide some support. And it's those little flags like that can make such a difference. So doing nothing should not be an option. If you see that something isn't right, first port of call is perhaps speak to the child, speak to the person that you're worried about, and ask them if things are okay. If they allay your fears, fine. But if they don't, seek help. Across Wales, we've got an established welfare section with a senior league welfare officer in every league. Every club has got a trained welfare officer that's in place. So please speak to these individuals, speak to these people, speak to me, speak to the Cricket Wales staff, and we can signpost and advise and give some help. So there's, I know Dave Loosemore's on the call, and Dave and I, when we train club welfare officers, we talk about the 3 R's, which are respond, record, and report. Such important things. Respond, do something. Record, write down what you do, and report it. Tell somebody. And it's very simple, but it's so important. If we can respond, record, and report, if the spidey sense is tingling, you're not happy about something, speak to somebody.
Cool. Fab. Kerry Chahal, did you have something you were going to chip in with there, mate?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Ian, listen, we've all been in lockdown for many months, and, I'll put my hand up, I've had my days. I think we've all had our days, and, my wife works from home, my daughter stayed home all that period. So do you think, Ian, as children are now starting to come back into some sort of normality, and cricket hopefully is a normality for them, that they could be shielding some issues that have happened in the experience that they've had over lockdown? I think we all really need to be aware of that, just as coaches, as parents, as officials of the clubs, that when the kids come back, they may not be the kids that we had in the winter that were raring to go, because some, the experience of lockdown may not be a happy home, everything, but just the fact that they've been cooped up for so long may have impacted them in ways that we don't really see.
I think that's a really good point. There's the nasty end, I suppose, Gary, where there's things taking place at home, domestic abuse or things along those lines that are taking place at home that, police and agencies have talked about. There's been an escalation in terms of reporting and domestic abuse has taken place. But I think also, you're absolutely right, kids have been probably stuck in front of Xboxes and not doing a lot. So you've got the physical dwindling that perhaps has taken place, but you've also potentially got some mental challenge around anxieties and about how people feel about coming back. And I think that's going to be different for all different kids. So I think we've just got to be open, be honest. If we're concerned about people, ask questions, ask them how they are. As coaches within the organisation, there's nothing wrong with you saying, how are you doing? What do you do during the downtime? How do you spend your time? What are you looking forward to? And have good conversations around that. And I'm a coach. When I was trained to be a coach, Steve Watkins trained me, and I remember him teaching me the fundamentals of coaching, and that's always stuck with me. If as a coach, if you can get children that are happy to be there and they want to come there, and they're in an environment where they feel safe, they're going to keep coming back, and we can protect cricket and grow cricket.
I think it's the good observational skills again, isn't it? And nothing untoward. Now it's not really COVID related, is it? You observe your players as coaches, and you if you know your players well, you tend to pick up on things that maybe look amiss.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Kerry. I can't see everybody on everybody's screen, so if you have got another query, just pop it in the chat box so I don't miss you in case you've got one. Just before we move on to a few more we have got a few more queries I wanted us to touch on that came in prior to earlier in the week, really. And as I say, most of the Q&A is going to follow at 8:30, but one of these points is quite relevant to safeguarding, I guess, and it is explicitly referenced in the guidelines. As we know, it does say currently there should be no use of changing rooms, once we resume. And the instruction therefore is for players to arrive, change and leave in their playing kit. It does, as I say, it does make explicit reference to saying the only exceptions to this will be for safety or safeguarding measures. So it makes explicit reference to potentially disability players if they need to get changed, for example, and they're not comfortable doing so in an open space. There are a few mitigating scenarios. You might be putting your thigh pads on or whatever it is that obviously involves exposing yourself. So I think that's the slight caveat to that rule, which as I say is reasonably explicit. But from a welfare and from a safeguarding bit, that's probably one of the few bits that is really bespoke to a safeguarding perspective.
It is, and from a kid's perspective, particularly at the younger age group, they're probably not as bashful as you or I would be. So I coach an age group right through, and I can remember sort of 9, 10, 11 years, you tell kids to put boxes on and put thigh pads on, and they would literally pull their trousers down on the pitch and things. So, so we've got to be aware of as coaches that perhaps get ahead of that and tell them what you expect of them.
Yeah, cool. Wonderful. We have our first question in the chat box, actually. Ian Williams, given the need to socially distance and probably limit the people present, we know that's 30. Should we request one parent for each child remain? It's a good one. That general thoughts on that, Ieuan?
Yeah, I think that touches on a number of areas, Ian. That's a really good question. From a mental health support, I think it's good to have parents present most of the time. We can all remember shouty parents that sometimes you wouldn't want present. It's also good in terms of if there were to be an injury, then in terms of who provides the first aid, then if the parent can provide the first aid, then that reduces the risk of others having to be hands-on with that child, for want of a better term. So I think ideally, yes. The limit is that we should have a maximum of 30 present in each group. So we've got to be cognizant of that and obey those instructions, which they are instructions from the Senedd. So where possible, yes, let's have parents there, but let's adhere to the regulations as closely as we possibly can.
Cool. Just another one touching on the changing rooms thing, I think, from Laura. Would this include a female playing within a mixed age group game, changing facilities? Yeah, there's a common sense bit to that. Like, if someone's uncomfortable exposing themselves, padding up or unpadding or something like that, it says from a welfare and safeguarding perspective. So I think there's an element of common sense that needs to be exercised on that one. Delith, I'm going to cut that question of yours. Is going to, does the 30 include parents? A lot of that is going to get touched on later on in the 8:30. Effectively, that 30 is a no, though. The 30 is you're playing, the playing from either side, umpires, scorers, coaches, those types of participants, if you like, in the game. But as I say, there's a lot more of that detail to come at 8:30. One of the things I was going to, first aid is a really big one in terms of welfare and player welfare. And again, first aid will come up at 8:30, but it's pertinent to a welfare perspective. And we've had queries around administering first aid with these guidelines in place. Without reading my notes word for word, I mean, Welsh government advice does state that we've still got a duty of care to make sure our players are okay. That's a given in any scenario. It's the common sense, again, rigorous cleaning, personal hygiene. For that person that is administering that first aid, most first aid boxes have a set of gloves. If they don't, I think anybody that's going in a first aid capacity would be well advised to bring gloves, probably a face mask. And aprons and those types of things. If it's just exercising that common sense, and again, it depends on severity of the injury and the proximity, of how close you need to be to the player. Similar goes back to Ian's point. That's why a parent being there at all times is a pretty sensible idea. So it's just a good one in terms of people thinking, how do I, what happens if something happens in my game from a first aid perspective? It's just taking as many precautions as you can. Whilst exercising that common sense, but as I say, we do still have that duty of care to players to make sure they're okay.
There's a follow-on point to that as well, Matt, around the first aid qualification that coaches need, and obviously that stands for 3 years. Inevitably, coaches will have had first aid qualifications expire over the last few months. So the reality of, are we going to be able to get to first aid training and blow into a mannequin at the minute? I, for one, I don't feel that comfortable about it presently. So I spoke earlier on with the ECB around this point, and so St. John's Ambulance that provide first aid training, they're just now starting, literally the 10th of July, they're just starting to rerun or start first aid deliveries. So we can expect other organisations to start providing first aid training imminently, I think. But we've got to look very carefully at that as to, I don't want to compel people to do that when they feel uncomfortable doing so, or there's a risk doing so. So whilst people's certificates may have expired, I think the advice for now is try and have an individual present who's got a first aid certificate still in place. But if they've recently expired, that's how it is for the time being. But we will try and get that back and current as soon as we're able.
Superb, thanks, Ieuan. Just going back to the parents, in case anybody can't see the chat box, and obviously, as I say, this is on record, so for people catching up with us at a later date. Leisha, our CEO, is on the line actually. So yeah, just to reiterate that, from a parent perspective, you are supposed to be, a considerable distance back from the boundary. You shouldn't be right on the boundary edge at any stage throughout the game. There are explicit instructions in the guidance not to be touching the ball if it crosses the rope and that type of thing. So, all of that is still in play. As I say, a lot of that will come through probably around 8:30 in the later one. But just a good one to note that, and obviously regular social distance for parents throughout the course of the day. Ian's just come in on that one. Presume parents can sit together if they form part of their chosen social bubble. Yeah, I would expect so. As long as you're within that bubble, then that's not really relevant to the cricket in that sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as I think the issues start to arise. Obviously, if you're not socially distancing with people outside of your chosen bubble, that's where we are. Okay, cool. Keep the questions coming if you've got anything else. That's really good. That really, in a brief nutshell, we've probably got through that a little bit quicker than we thought. Which does give you a little bit of time to touch on a few of the bits that you were quite keen to do. And whilst none of these are massively COVID related, do you want to just spend a little bit of a short amount of time going through some DBS related bits that you've said you get a lot of queries on almost on a daily basis, regardless of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly the welfare team and the staffing team get loads of those inquiries about DBS. So the DBS process, obviously administered by the ECB, we have visibility within Cricket Wales. So the Cricket Wales staff and the welfare team, so the league welfare officers, can see who has current DBSs within the system. So the process is that a verifier will invite people to complete the DBS. They give access to a portal which they'll complete an application for their DBS or for free for volunteers, and it's quite quick turnaround. That paper certificate with whatever content that is on there goes to the individual and the individual only. So we, Cricket Wales, the ECB, nobody else sees the content of that certificate. Only the individual does. The ECB will be notified if it's clear, and in which case it goes on the system that it's clear, and the expiry date. If there's content on the form, or if there's a query around people's names or dates of birth or something like that, then they'll issue a query. The ECB will speak to individuals and say, can we see the form, please, because we need to have a look at it and find out what's what. And they'll send 4, 5, 6 requests to individuals asking for the form. If they don't respond to it, the ECB are left with no option but to suspend the individual. And we've had a lot of those over the last few months, probably double figures. If encourage people, if you do know people that are in regulated activity roles, just because they've got content on their certificate doesn't mean that they can't be a great captain, a great coach, and supervise children. It just means that we need to see that content and do a risk assessment around it. So I get a lot of questions around verification. Anybody that holds a current DBS within English and Welsh cricket can be a verifier, and it's free. It's very easy, and all you need to do is speak to one of the welfare team or the staffing team, and we can get that done for you. During COVID, we were able to verify people's evidence by video chat, by video call, and I have to say that was superb, and it allowed us to sign many people off without having to drive miles in the cold and the dark and the wet to get that done. So I can see Peter Williams smiling there. So I feel your pain, Peter. So unfortunately, that facility was switched off yesterday by the ECB, and that's not cricket's decision. That is the DBS, the Disclosure and Barring Service. They're the ones that made the temporary decision to allow organisations to verify by video. But they think now that with 2 metre distancing, that is possible. We can slide documents across the table, remain distanced, and verify documents. So personally, and I know others will share my view here, that we'd like to go back to the video verification. Yeah, get some thumbs up on the screen there. Yes, quite a few. I'm sorry, I've got no control over it. If I had, we'd do it, but it remains out of our control. If I get the opportunity to lobby for it, and the Disclosure Barring Service have an annual conference which I try and go to, and we will lobby for it, because I think it's the right thing, and technology now is so good that you have a reasonable level of assurance that the content you see is accurate content. So, one other question I'm asked about is portability. Sorry, you can't port, and it's for the reason that I mentioned earlier. So if you're a school teacher and you've got a DBS, sadly that DBS is not acceptable within cricket, because it probably isn't smack bang up to date. The minute you print a DBS, it's already out of date is reality. But also, as a teacher, what's on your form might have been verified and risk assessed by the teaching profession, but hasn't necessarily been risk assessed by the cricket profession, which is why organisations need to have it separately. And again, that's something that's built into statute, Rehabilitation of Offenders Act and so on, that we are constrained to, and we can't work around that, unfortunately. But DBS is something I'm asked a lot. So if there are others on the call that would like to mention or ask any questions about DBS, please whack it in the chat. I can see from Tony Moss, very disappointed the online verification has ceased, seems a backward step. Concur, Tony, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a step forward, and maybe we'll go back there in time. DBS Club verifies lost his access to the system. Yeah, so if you haven't been on the system for 3 months, it will automatically lock you down. So, and we've been, it's 14 weeks, I think, isn't it, since it was taken off. So probably a lot of people are locked down. So it means a bit of work for the welfare team and myself and the staffing team. But if you're locked down, if you verify as a lockdown, whack us a quick email. Doesn't need to be War and Peace. One-liner is fine, and we can switch them back on and get them back active so they can start verifying face-to-face again, no problem at all. Any other questions on DBS? Happy to take them. If not, any general questions?
Oh, that's fine.
I personally will talk at this the Safe Hands portal. Anyone that's met me over the last 12 months would have heard me banging on about the new ECB Safe Hands portal, which is a new visible portal that club welfare officers across all of England and Wales will shortly have access to. So what club welfare officers struggle with at the minute is finding out when are people qualified coaches, when do they do their first aid, when do they do their Safe Hands, their safeguarding protecting children, their DBS. The new Safe Hands portal is designed to give access at club level to that data. So it's effectively ECB has got numerous different databases where all this information sits, and typical of any organisation really, those databases don't talk to each other. So they've designed and created a brand new portal called the Safe Hands Portal, or the Safe Hands Management System, which has pipes to each one of those systems to bring and pipe the data into a central repository. So we've been chosen, Cricket Wales has been chosen as one of the 3 first county boards in England and Wales to trial it. And in fact, we are the first, because we were given access to it the day before yesterday. And we're having a go literally as we speak, giving that a bit of a whirl and testing it operationally. So we've already found a few glitches in the system and things they weren't expecting, and we actually broke it in one occasion. So that's what testing is all about, eh? So delighted, and thanks very much to those that are testing it for us.
Yeah, just a question from Laura. Will there only be one person at each club that has access to that portal?
I think so at the moment. However, that's something I'm arguing and asking, that perhaps we should have more than one individual. Inevitably, if people work away or are unwell, then you only have one individual, a single point of failure, isn't it? So I'd like us to have more than one opportunity, or more than one individual to have access to the portal. But as I say, it's still being built at the minute. The beauty of our position is we're hand in glove with the developers and with the ECB in terms of shaping what it's going to look like. So I'll keep asking.
Cool. Anything else you want to quickly jump on, or are we?
I think that's it from me. I'm very happy to answer any questions from the floor.
As I say, we will record this. So if there's any bits you want to rerun or you're not sure and you want to go back over, there will be the opportunity to do that. It will go up on YouTube probably within the hour. But yeah, don't be shy. We'll leave it for 30 more seconds if there's nobody that's got a major query that they want to put up on here. That's absolutely fine.
Just from my perspective, then, thank you to everybody for talking cricket, keeping cricket visible during lockdown. Things that have been happening on Twitter and Facebook and various different things have been fantastic. So it's keeping cricket visible. And there was a tweet from one individual yesterday that's on a disability program and how delighted that he is to be back and well-being and wellness. And it's just lovely to be having those conversations again. Also, thank you to the welfare team. We wouldn't be, in my view, one of the safest places to play cricket in England and Wales if it wasn't for the welfare team that give of their time across all of Wales and we've made significant strides in creating our safeguarding umbrella to keep our kids and keep cricket as safe as we possibly can be. So, diolch yn fawr iawn to every one of you. Thank you very much.
Cool, superb. We'll leave it there. As I say, more than welcome if you haven't registered for 8:30 tonight. I believe there are some spaces left, so get yourself onto that if you'd like to. And yeah, just wish everybody a really happy return back on the weekend, and yeah, stay safe, really.
Cheers all. Stay well. Good luck Saturday.
Take care. All the best. Thanks, everybody.
Let's hope it stays dry.